Yo, what's going on, my buddies? Totaljophes coming at you with my review for the Attack on Titan video game. Okay, so for those of you who have watched some of my videos before, or keep track of my Twitter, you probably have gotten by now that I actually really love the Attack on Titan anime. I haven't read a whole lot of the manga. I have read some after Season 1 of the anime takes place, but I also did that a while ago, so I don't remember a whole lot. I remember bits and pieces, but either way, I'm definitely an Attack on Titan fan, and so when I found out that this game was coming to America for the PS4 and Xbox One, I was all over that! And I've had my chance to play at least the story mode from beginning to end, as well as a lot of the expedition mode and, some side missions and whatnot. And so I figured it's time to throw a review, and I will say beforehand, it's a pretty good game. So, let's get started. So for those of you who have seen my reviews before, you know that I do the reviews based off of story, graphics, and gameplay. I give each of those a score out of 10 for a final score out of 30. And starting off, we've got the story. Now, if you've seen Season 1 of Attack on Titan, the anime, you pretty much already know the story of this game. Except, I will say that this game does add a few new scenes. Like, for instance, in the anime, when the Scout Regiment, or the Survey Corps, depending on which version of the anime you watched, when they captured those two Titans that Hanji titled Sonny and Bean, when they captured those two, they were there. You were told that they captured them and whatnot. Whereas the game gets really in-depth with that, like you actually go out as that squad and capture those Titans, and all of the struggles that went along with that. They add a decent few scenes to it, which is actually pretty cool. It gives you more expanse on the story. I don't know if that was in the manga or not, because like I said, I've only read the manga after Season 1 of the anime, but all the same, it's cool to have that in there and actually have it, visually playing out and voice acted and whatnot, and that's really cool. I believe most of the voice actors, if not all of them, took up their original roles from the anime in the game, which is also awesome. Lots of good continuation there. So as for more details of the story, I will say that it does go by pretty quickly. Like, it does tell the story of the anime, but because you play through a lot of the story, because a lot of the story is in the battles you play, like, the storytelling goes by pretty quickly, Like, because you're doing a battle, you're focusing more on fighting, and then it kind of goes to the cutscene that happens after that, and you didn't get a whole lot of story while you were fighting. So the story itself goes by a little bit quickly, but all the same, it does at least still do a good job of telling it. On top of that, something that I really loved with this was, in the anime, and again, I don't know if it's this way in the manga, so don't read me if I'm wrong about the manga, but in the anime at least, there's a few characters you really don't get a whole lot of time with, you don't get really emotionally invested in by the time that they end up dying in the anime. And the game, whereas it doesn't really add more to them story-wise or anything, you get to actually talk to them at camp and, get more of a feel for their personality and what they're thinking about everything, and I kind of like that. I kind of like that you got to spend a little bit more time with these characters. And like something that I will specifically say as an example is that in the anime, you don't get to know Petra very well. I don't know if it's different in the manga, but in the anime, you don't get to know her that well. She's got some scenes, she's got some story, but not much. And in the game, whereas she doesn't have more story-wise, you can talk to her more, You can get more of what she's thinking, of what her personality is like, of what her position is. And it's really cool that they let you kind of get more invested in those characters because of that. And because of that, it sucks more when they die. But all the same, I like that degree of emotional attachment that they kind of added. And whereas talking to them doesn't really add much to it, unless you're talking to them for a side quest or anything, it's still that option that's there that I really love that adds a bit more depth to the characters, and I'm glad that they added that to it. And overall, the story, it's the same as the anime, so overall, like the actual plot line, it's awesome. So what I will say, all in all, story's good. It definitely adds a lot more to characters, but it does go by awfully quickly, and there's some things that might be a little bit confusing if you haven't seen the anime. So, final score for the story, 9 out of 10. Because as I said, it's definitely a good story, just a few little nitpicks. Alright, and on to the graphics. Now, The graphics is also a really good point in this game, and I mean, a lot of this game is really good, but on top of that, yeah, it looked to be, you know, cel shaded, so it looks like the anime and whatnot, which is awesome because it really does look like the anime. Like, it really does look like you are actually playing the anime, and that's kick-ass. I mean, I have no, like, actual issues with that. What I will say, though, is that whereas the animations are all pretty good, when it actually gets to the actual story cutscenes, sometimes the animations get a bit stiff. Like, you know, Aaron's kind of like, ugh, when he turns his head, you know, that sort of thing, rather than just like, yo, he's like, ugh. But yeah, so, you know, sometimes the animations get a little stiff, but, you know, it's nothing that bad. It doesn't really take out of the game at all, really. And then the action scenes are all really good, but you can tell because the anime had some really trippy, like, really in-depth, really, like, acrobatic, action-packed action scenes. When making the game, they kind of toned it down a little bit, probably to save money and time on actually making the animations. So the actual action scenes that you would have seen in the anime are either played out in the battles, or are a little bit toned down in the cutscenes. Like, for instance, when Levi's fighting the female Titan, there's not as much badass swinging back and forth kick-ass Levi action. It's more just kind of like he swings by her, cutting her a few times, and that's mostly it. I mean, yes, the primary focus of that part was that you were Levi playing that fight and attacking her, but all the same, when it still got to the cutscene, the action was a little bit toned down. It's also a lot less bloody, like the scenes are. The gameplay is not, because you get covered in blood, and that's kind of cool, but the actual cutscenes are a lot less bloody, and in fact, in a lot of scenes, I noticed when somebody gets squished or something, there's a splatter, but it doesn't even look like blood. It looks like, I don't know, like gray-black shit? I don't know, but a lot of times the blood wasn't really all that there. And you do have the option of playing with the blood off, but I didn't do that, so I know for a fact that it is just less bloody in general. But, you know, that's not really a bitch. That's just something that, I'm throwing out there just so you guys know. But all in all, yes, the graphics look really good. It looks just like the anime, and it's really fun that way. But the movements can be a little stiff at times, and the action's definitely toned down a little bit. So final score for the action, for the graphics, I mean, is 9 out of 10. For the reasons that I mentioned, that it is still good, it is still beautiful, but there's a few little things. And finally, on to the gameplay, which is definitely this game's strong suit, like, more so than the others. And the others were good. Oh, okay. If you ever watched the anime and you wondered what it would be like to play a game version of that, this is what it is. Like, this is so accurate. Like, when you're zipping around on the omnidirectional movement gear, it is so fucking identical to the anime. Like, you really do zip around just how they do in the anime, and that's kick-ass. I mean, even a little bit more so, actually. Like, you have a little bit more variety with how you swing around and shit, and it's really badass. Like, I more than once just had fun in that game, just zipping around on the ODM gear, just flying around, just doing nothing, not even fighting Titans or anything. Just zipping around was fun as hell because it is so accurate, because they put so much effort into the physics and everything that went into that. Like, even right down to when you're in an open field and there's nothing to latch onto, you don't latch onto it and zip around. There's nothing to do. I mean, if there's little rocks and trees, you can still attach onto those and fly around, but yeah, it definitely gets really in-depth with that, and I like that. That's really cool. Then when you're coming to the actual fights with the Titans, it's very complex when you're actually fighting Titans. There's a lot of different buttons that go into it. You have to press R1 to lock onto them, then press square to actually shoot, an anchor into them. Then you're swinging around with, the left analog stick, and then, you have to press X to, charge in super fast, or you can let go altogether to charge in slowly, and then you press, I think it's triangle to actually, like, attack them and whatnot. And there's a lot of different buttons that go into it, and it is fairly complex, but at the same time, that's kind of awesome. It kind of adds to immersion, because you know that in the anime and in the manga and whatnot, fighting a Titan is very complex. It does require a lot of little bits working together as part of a big whole, and you definitely get that feeling when you're actually playing it. And it makes it that much more satisfying when you're actually fighting and killing a Titan. And not to mention, once you played it for a little bit, you definitely do get used to it. Like, your muscles definitely do get into the memory of how to fight and how to zip around and how to attack the Titan and whatnot. So it doesn't take out of it at all that the controls are complex. Not in the slightest. In fact, it only adds to it. So I actually really like that. The only few things that I really didn't like, honestly, was the fact that yes, fighting the Titans was always very complex and very entertaining, but it did get a little bit repetitive at times, I'll admit. Not to the point where it gets really stale and boring, but just a little bit repetitive. Like, specifically in battles where you literally are just supposed to kill Titans for a certain amount of time, it does get a little bit repetitive, just kind of zipping around, maybe cutting this one's leg, or cutting both of his legs, or cutting this one's arms, and then going for the nape, you know. It gets a little bit repetitive at times, but not to a degree where it gets really stale and boring, at least. So I at least like that. My only other real bitch with this game was that the AI was sometimes kind of shitty. More specifically, there's a couple of times in the game where you have to get a Titan to chase you to a certain direction, and they'll just be sitting there running every fucking way but at you. More specifically, there's one of the final missions where you're trying to get the female Titan to sprint after you to certain places in the town, and she's just fucking sitting there running into buildings and, like, jumping on top of buildings and just doing what the fuck ever she feels like, rather than running after me. And, like, you can click a button, I think it's the options button, to taunt them and get them to run after you, but that doesn't work very well. Like, it kind of gets their attention, but then they're still acting like a fucking retard, running like a chicken with their head cut off, running into everything. So the AI gets a little bit shitty at times, almost hilariously so. But, you know, it's not as if your AI or your allies' AI gets pretty bad. It's just the enemies, which makes the game, honestly, just a little bit easier. Sometimes a little irritating when you're supposed to get them to chase you, but, you know, nothing all that terrible. And then, kind of going along with that, because of the AI not being the greatest, when there was bosses, or, you know, final subjugation targets, so they're called, you know, they get a cutscene when they show up, and, you know, they look really menacing and whatnot, but they're not that much different from a Titan. They just have a little bit more health, and that's really all I noticed, so the bosses weren't really all that threatening. But all the same, you know, regardless of that, I know it sounds like it's actually kind of a big problem. It's really not, though. It doesn't take anything out of the gameplay. It just makes it a little bit easier, and sometimes kind of funny. So I will say final score for the gameplay is still 9 out of 10. Because the gameplay is so accurate, it's so fun, it's so fast-paced, it's so action-packed. Just a little bit of shitty AI every now and then, and slightly repetitive. Not that much, though. Okay, so there you have it, guys. There is my review for the Attack on Titan game, which, final score, 27 out of 30. Now, a lot of you may think that that's a little low, a lot of you may think that's a little high, but that is where I definitely think this game is at. I think it's very, very good. I think that if we're looking for an Attack on Titan experience in video game form, this is the definitive way to do that. I know there was one or two other games released. I think there was one for the 3DS, and I know there's a dinky PC one, but this is the definitive version of playing Attack on Titan on a video game. Very entertaining, very fast-paced, very action-packed, very bloody, very just all-around amazing. It also even has a kind of hint as to what's happening in Season 2, which I got because, like I said, I read a little bit of the manga after Season 1, and it kind of leads into the Beast Titan a little bit. Not too much, but all the same, it is a very, very good experience. If you like Attack on Titan, if you like the anime, if you like the manga, I say definitely go get the game. It is so perfect. It adds to the whole Attack on Titan experience so well, so masterfully. So, what did you guys think about the game? Have you played it? Are you still on the fence about getting it? Or did you just, you know, not even like it, not even bother buying it? All the same, talk about that in the comment section down below. I want to know. Definitely leave a like on this video because I want the word to get out, because I really want this game to succeed, because it definitely is really good. So definitely leave a like. And then subscribe for more for future videos, because I'll be uploading multiple videos every week as usual. So that'd be about it. So until next time, stay pretty, my buddies.